Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are in the world. Welcome to RCI TV, and we're back once again on Mondays with a brand new championship. And this time it's the turn of the GT4 and TCX with Monday Multi-Class Madness. Round 3 tonight taking place at Snetterton, located in Norfolk, and as per most UK circuits, began life as an airfield. Opened originally in 1943 before closing in November of 48 and reopened in 1953 as the circuit venue we know today. Now owned by Jonathan Palmer's Motorsport Vision Group, it has since undergone extensive rebuilding work and facility improvements. Just under 4.8 kilometres in length with 12 turns. I'm John Dalton, your lead commentator. Alongside me, Dan Van Zoofen, and behind the cameras, Ash Bibby. And as always, our live stewards waiting in the wings. Welcome, everyone.
Yes, Snetterton. Who doesn't love Snetterton? I don't, but it should provide for some great racing here today. Because, well, as we saw in earlier events, the multi-class racing with the TCX cars and the GT4s always provide some spectacular racing and some spectacular qualifying as well. We're in qualifying as we speak, 15 minutes and 40 seconds on the clock, and we're looking here to Polish driver Alexander Orlic. He's currently P9, just had a little snap of oversteer there, but he's trying to improve his lap, as is everyone. Track temperatures are quite low here, or well, quite high for British weather standards, let's say. And of course the TCX drivers go first as usual. Next up are the GT4s, which should provide for some close qualifying.
Yeah, so weather looking very nice indeed. 18 degrees in the air, 21 degrees on the track. So Pirellis are going to be loving these temperatures here today. Nice and cool to really keep the surface temperatures down. Hopefully drivers have done enough practice to keep the pressures in that magic window. But as you said, of course, Dan, the GT4, the TCX, will take to the qualifying stage first. So a split qualifying as we normally host in multi-class, obviously to avoid the two faster groups kind of tripping up each other. Of course, the first 10 minutes dedicated to the M2s, and then the second 10 minutes, should we say, second half, of course, dedicated to the GT4s. Currently, of course, on board with Tim Ireland. Alexander Orlic behind is going to be getting a little bit of a tow, should we say, down the Bentley Straight, of course, towards the corners of Brundle and Nelson. A very tricky chicane, fast entry left, and then scrub lots of speed off for the right-hand side. So maybe a little bit of an advantage here today for Alexander Orlic. But time's looking very competitive at the top between Nico Kumpu and Christian Lindgren. Once again, we saw these two battling, of course, in the Ferrari Challenge Cup just last season. Of course, Christian Lindgren was a bit of a late late entry, should we say, to the championship contention at the top. Of course, Nico Kumpu and of course Klaus Nyring battling out for the majority of the season, and Christian Lindgren just sitting outside there. Matthias Byron just behind them, and then in close contention, of course, Richard Phillips and Tom Shipston representing the RPMS camp. Christian Romano, another Italian driver there in P6. Phil Roberts, P7. Callum Kerrigan in P8. Marco Facuscio in P9. Thibaut Roskam in P10. Of course, Alexander Orlic in 11th. Tim Ireland in 12th. Richard Whittle 13th. Hubert Hauser 14th. And Keith Whittle in 15th. I think all M2s are currently circulating around. A couple of drivers yet to set a lap, including Aaron Jackson, Spoda Skrillex, and Les Stevenson. Dan, drivers maybe just pushing the limits that little bit hard, maybe invalidating their laps, or just trying to see if that track will come up in, of course, condition. Track currently fast, Dan, not the optimal that they were probably hoping for today.
Snetterton is quite a forgiving track if we're talking about track limits. We saw Austria, we saw Imola, and they aren't really forgiving for track limits. But here on Snetterton, you can really go a little bit outside of the white lines on the track and just get away with it on Assetto Corsa Competizione, and that's of course in favor for not only qualifying laps but also in the race, because it could avoid you just a drive-through which could ruin your race. We have Lee Stephenson here with the Roker Poker livery, of course. He's currently in P29. Over the line he goes to P8, 6/10 of the leader, and I already see that we have a very competitive TCX class. Last time in qualifying it was Spoda Marcus Krellex that took pole position, followed by Nico Kumpu and Victor Nordqvist. Now P3 already had a gap to P1, that is 0.6 of a gap. If you look at the timing board, it's P4 now, but after P4, it's only a 10th or 2 in between. So we've got a really close qualifying here in the TCX class. Snetterton isn't the longest of circuits, but it has a few good corners, of course. So it's still quite a challenging track, John, as we see the Polish driver of the 587 BMW almost battling with another BMW trying to get their best laps in. But of course, battling with each other like you do in the race won't give you the ultimate lap time. And with 11, that's a touche, and so that indeed won't be the best for lap times, and maybe it will even get investigated by the stewards. And with 11 minutes to go in this qualifying session, the BMWs only have 1 minute and 20 seconds to get a good lap time on the board. So this will be the last lap for all BMWs they can drive. So they really need to get it on this lap. I presume not everyone has got a banker lap in, but it could of course be the case. Aaron Jackson goes to P11, and so qualifying rages on for the BMWs coming to close, and also rages on for the GT4s, which I see standing there in pit lane.
Yeah, Andy Boardman's been sat in pit lane for about 2 minutes now, eager to get the track position, of course, at the head of the queue, be the first car out to try and maximise the qualifying time that he has, of course. About 39 seconds or so before we will see the GT4s rolling out onto the grid. Of course, it was the last lap for Tim Ireland and Alexander Orlix as they came together in turn 1 of Riches. Callum Kerrigan now through the last turn of Murray's. Needs a good run to the line now, currently in P10 for the Vulcan Racing M2, and he abandons the lap in aid of a practice pit entry, which again is very tricky here at Snetterton. It's a little chicane, and then you've really got to slam on the anchors to draw the car up in time for the line. But the last of the M2s coming round the final corner, of course, the long sweeper of Coram. It feels like it goes on forever. Very tricky corner to not overwork the front left tyre, and Christian Romano, of course, Nico Kumpu just ahead, peels off into the pit lane. Christian Romano to the line now, one of the last cars currently on their fast lap. Will he see an improvement as we see the GT4s rolling out? And we do, up into P4 for Christian Romano. That's a very good, valiant effort indeed, and stops very sensibly in the middle of the circuit to avoid, of course, colliding into the GT4s, as we see Matthew Malcolm overcooking the hairpin of Montreal as they of course come out. No tyre blankets in the GT4 category, Dan, and you know it normally takes a few laps for these drivers to get their tyres in the optimum window.
Hence why everyone was racing in pit lane to get out the pit lane as soon as possible, because you don't have to really worry about your tires getting cold, because they don't have tires anyway. So you're just sitting there with your GT4 tires getting already cold. So the GT4s, you can just wait in pit lane and be the first out on track. Andy Boardman is one of the first out on track, and will probably be the first one to set his lap time in the GT4 Aston Martin. Beautiful car it is. I always love the look of those Aston Martins. They're quite low, and it sets them up pretty nice. Even lower cars is of course the McLaren GT4 driven by Ajay Goat, and we of course have also some Alpines. We have some Ginettas in the mix, Audis, Mercedes, you name it. Even we have some Chevrolet GT4s. So it's quite a diverse field if we're talking about cars. Last time, the McLarens have always done really well. The BMWs, of course, with that powerful engine, do well as well. But given Snetterton is a mix in between, I think we'll see some of the same, John. I think we'll see some McLarens, some BMWs in the mix, perhaps some Porsches. However, they aren't quite the fastest in the GT4 category, probably because of the POP. We see Matt Stevens driving for RPMS, and Jordan Daly is in the Corvette as well. Everyone is now just gathering up on that last corner to start a great quali lap, and with 7 minutes to go, the time is slowly ticking down, and I hear we're going on board with Jordan Daly, John.
Yeah, on board with the Chevrolet Camaro. A great car. It's a bit of a bus, a bit of a boat, but really stable in these corners. So on board with Jordan Daly. We're coming down, of course, to the first corner of Riches. Very fast sweeper, almost a double apex right-hander. You see the front end there washing away as Daly pitches the car in for the run to Montreal. Of course, it's a good passing place. Set yourself up well in Riches. If your opponent leaves the door open on the inside, it's a very easy move to make, or you can still go wide, jump on the power early, and try and out-drag them into Palmer. Again, it's a very late apex for Palmer. Be careful on the exit. You can pick up a track limits warning here, as you see all of the extra kind of AstroTurf there. And now we begin the run down to Agostini. Bit of a misleading corner, looks wider than it actually is, but it's a very sharp hairpin left. You've really got to hug the inside line. Again, be careful on the exit. Extra curbing, it doesn't always mean that you can use it. Next up into Hamilton, again a misleading corner, looks a lot wider than it is, but you do have to scrub a little bit of speed off before the hard braking of Oggies. Keep it tight and you should find lots of grip on the inside. See Daly there wrestling the steering wheel in first gear as he begins his run now into Williams. Tyre bundle on the inside, normally a good apex reference, however, is a movable object in ACC, so don't always use that because you may turn in one time and it might not even be there before the big long run down the Bentley Straight. Of course, ideal for slipstreaming. These cars, of course, with reduced horsepower might not be the ideal thing, but in to Brundle and Nelson. Again, fast left-hander, scrub off lots of speed for Nelson, but be careful on the entry. Now the bomb hole, big compression through the inside of the corner. GT3 car, it's flat. GT4, you're going to have a little bit of a lift, maybe even a dab of the brakes in some of the faster cars. And you just see there the front end washing wide again in Coram for Jordan Daly. Gets it right back over to the pole side of the circuit before the turn inside for Murray's. Again, you've got to get a good exit out of Murray's because it's a long drag down to the finish line, and Jordan Daly across the line for the Just Gamers entry. Good enough for fourth position. Just behind, of course, John Eraser. Just ahead of him, Andy Boardman and Azure Goat to the top of the board, looking very commanding in the GT4 McLaren. Carlos Calatiud just behind, Grim Lilith behind them. Christian Clipper, not a great first lap, 1.6 seconds off the top time. Matt Stevens, 2.4, overcooked Montreal quite severely in the rearview mirror of Jordan Daly. Kevin Boss just outside the top 10. Andy Carlisle quite near. Jordan Bubbins a second down, 1.6 seconds down again. Sam Burnett. Christian Lindgren, of course, your pole sitter for the M2 CS down in P17. So there is a little dark blue and a light blue marker differentiating the two classes. So if you're unsure, then that's one to watch. Manzo equally in the Chevrolet. Let's see, can he match what Daly's doing? Of course, Ted Edwards also in a Chevrolet. So 3 Chevrolets this time by Dan. We've only seen 2 in the past, but they seem to run very well together. So I'm wondering if they can work together to, of course, get themselves towards the front of the grid today. Of course, the big V8 engine down the Bentley Straight should be more than formidable kind of match, should we say, for the the M4, sorry, of Christian Clipper.
Yes, indeed. Although we have seen, I've been quite surprised by the performance of that BMW though, because it even outruns the Chevy. It's amazing how powerful that BMW is. João Menso now coming over the line, the Portuguese driver. Last time he qualified, he didn't qualify because he actually wasn't there, and so it may be a little bit of a disadvantage because he may not be as familiar with that GT4 as others. He still manages to grab a P9 just inside the top 10. We still have 3 minutes and 40 minutes to go, so it will be quite challenging to keep that spot. Kevin Boss in the Aston Martin doesn't improve his time, and so he will stay on the cursed position, P13 for now. Rob Franken, the Dutchman, qualified in P8 last time around in Imola, currently driving in P10, almost over the line. The Mercedes 202, can he improve his time with 3 minutes 25 seconds on the board? Rob Franken, the Dutchman, doesn't improve his time for now, or he needs to come across the line and stays in P10. Then Martin Ulrich indeed does improve his time. One of 2 Ginettas here. We have 2 Ginettas, Brendan Jones and Ulrich. Ulrich currently in P4, Brendan Jones in P15. We have Emma Plate, the other Dutch driver in the Audi GT4 with the number 71 Audi over the line, currently in P37, will overtake all the BMW TCX cars and goes to P9 for now, just 2 spots up in comparison to his fellow Dutchman, with 2 minutes and 40 seconds to go. It's a spicy qualifying currently. Lilith with, of course, the controller driver. He's driving with a controller 8 tenths down to pole position. As we see Ted Edwards in the other Camaro, John pointed out we have 4 or 3 Camaros. Ted Edwards is one of them in the number 8. He will come across the line again, overtake all those BMWs M2s, and he will slot in for now in a provisional P9. And so I can see the track is getting a little bit lower of temperature, and there's of course grip added to the circuit, and so those times will get faster and faster. So the next 2 minutes in qualifying, John, will be absolutely crucial, not only for Christian Clippert but for the rest of the field.
Yeah, as close as you can get to the kind of zero, should we say, on the clock that you do cross the line. Of course, the faster the track will be, the more rubber, in theory, laid down as Christian Clippert improves up into P8 with a 156.972. Again, expecting a little bit more from the German driver in the 236, but again, he does have at least one more stab at it. Matt Stevens across the line, of course, in P15. Adam Carlisle comes up into P12. Rob Franken set to try and improve once again up into P8. This time, that's a good improvement there from the Dutch driver. Martin Ulrich next time by up into P2 in the Ginetta. That's a fantastic improvement there with a 156.227. Not too far behind Azure Goat and just ahead of Jordan Daly. I can feel kind of David and Goliath starting to battle here already as a few GT4 drivers elect to take back to the pits, 2 of which, of course, Kevin Boss and Bren Jones will take no further parts of their positions are locked in. Ted Edwards, meanwhile, down in P11. First couple of Delta sections looking quite good, and he may make it to the line with another stab at it, as the track condition is, of course, still fast. No improvement to optimum. Matt Stevens, a big off there. That looks like it's in the first sector. That's going to be an invalid lap, so no point continuing that one. Back to the pits for him. Mike Redford, driver we've not really touched on, snuck into P7. He's back in the pit lane as well, so no further part for Redford. Meanwhile, Christian Clippert down in P9. Looks like a very good improvement there, but it's very wide coming through the chicane. And just trying to spot him on the board. It's still a valid lap after that, so we're going to have to see how that fares up. Andy Boardman to the line. Meanwhile, it's a 156.280. Not good enough to improve. He'll start on the second row of the grid. Ted Edwards has another stab at it, of course, along with Andy Boardman and Azure Goat as the checkered flag comes out. So any driver now crossing the line will, of course, be locked in that position. No further improvement for the 511. Matthew Malcolm, meanwhile, still yet to set a lap, finding it tricky maybe to get to grips with the circuit tonight. The 199 all the way down in P38, and of course we don't shuffle the classes, so if Matthew Malcolm's lap this time by isn't valid at all, he's going to be starting at the back of the M2, so that's going to be very detrimental to his GT4 efforts, but keeps it tidy through Brundle and Nelson. Avoids the track limits now. Through the bomb hole he goes. Big compression. Of course, be careful not to lose the rear end. Extra kind of curbing on the outside. Again, very tempting to use, but can upset the car quite badly, especially in a GT3 car. These GT4s, of course, are a little bit more kind of comparable to the road-going machines. A little bit more forgiving over the bumps and curbing as he begins his run, of course, out of Murray's towards the line. Checker flag already out, so whatever lap this is, that will be it for Matthew Malcolm. Coming to the line, it's good enough for P20, just ahead, of course, of the BMWs, but at the back of the GT4s. But, of course, that's going to be good because no slower cars to try and overtake. Emo plate with a small improvement, I believe, up into P7. And we've still got a couple of the top drivers running, of course. We've got the number 8 just ahead. That's Ted Edwards. We've got the number 69 of Andy Boardman and Azure Goat just coming in behind. And Azure Goat, let's have a look at the deltas. Not looking good on any of the drivers on circuit at the moment. I think everybody's going to be locked in unless they have a miraculous run through the last corner. I can't see anyone changing grid position at the moment. I think Azure Goat is solid in the pole position. Andy Boardman to the checker, no improvement. Ted Edwards, also no improvement. And Azure Goat, again, no improvement. Yao Manzo, the last car to cross the line, currently in P13 and stays P13 overall on that one. So qualifying results on your screen, Dan, and very interesting, 2 cars have the exact same final sector.
look how competitive the field is. The last time, if you wanted to qualify P13, you were 1.8 seconds off the pole position. Currently, you are 1 second off pole position. So you can see everyone's kind of getting used to that GT4 and the GT4 handling as well. And so I reckon the qualifying is getting more and more competitive, and it only promises us some good things for the upcoming race. We can see the TCX cars. Lindgren took pole position. Nico Kumpu got P2. Spodus Skrillex, who took pole position last time, is currently in P4, P3. Romano currently in P4, Bayron in P5, and Lee Stephenson rounds off the top 6. And I hear in my ear, we are currently going to the standings of the overall standings, John.
Yeah, championship standings, of course, coming up on your screens now. It's Mike Redford at the top of the screen with 39 points to his name, currently starting down in P8. So he's going to be wanting to cut through the traffic very quickly indeed to get onto the back of John Eraser and Azure Goat. Just 2 points behind. It's a McLaren top 4 at the moment, 34, 32 and 21 points apiece. We then see Yao Manzo in the Chevrolet Camaro tied with Andy Boardman on 18 points apiece. Rob Franken on 15, Ted Edwards on 13. And then we've got a tie for 9th with Christian Clipper in the M4 and, of course, Carlos Calatayud in the Mercedes, both on 11 points apiece. Moving on, of course, to the second page, Matthew Malcolm with 9 points to his name. He's starting, of course, at the back of the GT4 grid today, so going to be looking for a clean start towards the front of the grid. He shall go, hopefully. Battle of the Dutchies this time with Emo Plate and Kevin Boss. 7 points to Emo, 5 to Kevin Boss, so we'll see who prevails on that one come the final round. Adam Carlisle and Martin Foster just a point apart, tied with Martin Ulrich as well. Battle of the Martins going on for P15. Matt Stevens on 2 points, Bren Jones on 1 point, Jordan Bubbins and Sam Burnett yet to score in, of course, the GT4 Pro category. And, of course, just another page there. Jordan Daly with 0 points. First round for him tonight. And Bernardo Teixeira and Craig Hewlett have unfortunately signed out and will take no further part in the standings. And now moving on, of course, to TCX Pro. It's Raphael Huell at the top of the grid. 39 points to his name. We then got a tie between Victor Nordqvist and Spodus Skrillex. Victor did comment earlier that he may not make tonight's race, and if he does, he's going to be towards the back end of qualifying, and unfortunately no Nordqvist on the board today, so that's going to be a good game for Spodus Skrillex if he can keep this one clean. Les Stevenson tied with Nico Kumpu on 25. We've then got Christian Lindgren and Tom Shipston tied with 21. Christian Romano on 15. And then another tie in the TCX between Alexander van der Voda and Theobald Roskam for essentially 9th position. Then moving on, of course, to page 2, Callum Kerrigan on 11 points. Aaron Jackson and Phil Roberts, two very close people outside of the racing circuit, should we say, on 9 points. So that's a bit of an inter kind of battle of the friends, should we say, between those two. Matthias Byron on 7, Alexander Orlix on 4. Just a point behind Neil Pimlott. And then we've got Richard Phillips and Richard Whittle tied with 1 point apiece. So battle of the Richards in the BMW category. Hubert Hauser on 0 and Tim Ireland also on 0 yet to score. And I believe we may have a third page. We do. Marco Fucuscio and Keith Whittle, again, 0 points apiece. Daniel Merchant, Miguel Martins and Paul Potts have unfortunately signed out and will take no further part in the season. And looking very good here today at Snetterton. We are 18 degrees in the air, 21 degrees down on the track, and it's 10 o'clock in the morning in-game time. So in theory, temperatures may rise a very tiny bit over the next hour or so, but a super packed grid, of course, here today. We've got about 20 GT4s and then equally as many nearly TCX cars. It's going to be one of those races, isn't it, Dan, where, you know, track position is going to be key. Everybody's going to want to be at the head of the field. And, of course, when it comes to traffic, it's going to be very, very tricky to get past some of these cars because the kind of mid-corner speed of the TCXs and GT4s are almost similar. It's kind of obviously the power and the brakes and that little bit more grip that kind of, you know, make the difference between these two machineries. But I think today's going to be about traffic management more than anything.
Confidence is key really at Snetterton. I've seen it through a lot of races. If you're confident with the track and you're also confident with the drivers that are racing you, which drivers are getting used to, getting to know each other now. The GT4 knows almost every driver good. Same for the BMW M2 class. And so it's really about confidence, because Snetterton, at some points it's wide, at some points it's narrow. It's really a diverse track. So you're not only gonna need to know your opponent, you have to know the track, which risks you can't take, which risks you cannot take. And so it's going to be really interesting about traffic management, because especially with those BMW M2 TCX cars, you really want to get them on the straight, obviously, but because in the corners, in the middle sector, it really tightens a little bit the track, and so it's going to be hard to make moves confidence up to the grid and lap cars with confidence. If you don't have it, you're going to be stuck for a while. If you do, you can send it safely. You might be able to get up some positions compared to others that maybe don't have the confidence to do that. So confidence is key, consistency is key around this track, and I'm really curious how everyone is going to welfare with not only their opponents but also the GT4s and TCX cars on track, because in my opinion, Snetterton always brings some chaos, and I think it will do today as well, especially with the multi-class racing, it will. And so I think, John, we're in for an exciting race.
Yeah, hopefully the Monday multi-class madness phrase that I've coined for this one will kick in today. Fingers crossed, yes. Of course, stewards not too busy. We do have live stewards on hand for today's race, and they will be casting their BDI down on everything going on. Lots of warnings in the qualifying for the 699, the 421 and the 587, all for using text chat in game, which is of course frowned upon in the RCI rulebook. So be very careful of that one if you are signing up to any of our events anytime soon. And the calendar this week looking a little bit quieter than usual. Midweek Masters continues on Wednesday, heading to the Hungaroring for round 2. Team Monkey Racing beating RRP Racing Team Solvaloo and RPMS Simsport in Pro. Meanwhile, it was RPMS Simsport with a 1-2 in silver, with Racing 25 years in third. So sign up still open for that one if you do want a late season entry. And Friday, in theory, should see our KTM Masters beginning if sign-ups improve on this one. GT4 or GT2, pick your poison for this season of technical and underused tracks to really put your skills to the test. And no Saturday nights out this week. We're on a 1-week break, but returning Saturday the 30th for round 5 at Alton Park. So, of course, if you do want to get involved with any of our events anytime soon, head on over to the website racerci.com, where you can sign up even in the mid-season if you fancy some late racing action. But meanwhile, today, cars beginning to grid up in double formation. We've got one car in the pit lane. It's the number 95 of Mike Redford. Not sure what's happened there. Maybe a kind of logical stop being told in my ear. Possibly forgotten to put fuel in the car, which is a big no-no. Put it in the chat. Apparently I'm a bit oblivious to this one, but yeah, guess who forgot to put their fuel back in? It's Mike Redford, everybody. The number 95 starting from pit lane, but meanwhile Azure Goat at the head of the field, followed by Martin Ulrich, Jordan Daly and Andy Boardman. Some big names behind as we wait for the green flag to drop, and we are go. Of course, Azure Goat will have the inside line into turn 1. The Ginetta's going to have to do it around the outside. David and Goliath into turn 1. Jordan Daly makes up a place on Andy Boardman as they head through Riches towards Montreal. Of course, we've got cars off in the background. John Aracer takes the rallycross line. Can he get it under control? He does. The Swiss driver holds on to the McLaren as it jumps across the grass. The 699, there's some fantastic driving, but we've got spinners in the background. Looks like Grim Lilith caught up on the inside, possibly Matt Stevens, I'm not sure, in the Porsche Cayman, but we're going to have some replays coming in very shortly. Here we go. Let's have a look at this from the above angle. John Aracer coming back on. We've got a Mercedes in the background, comes spearing in, takes out Grim Lilith, Kevin Boss, Yao Manzo, to name a few. Matthew Malcolm has to stop on the apex. The M2s have to check up in the background and take avoiding action as well. We're going to be hitting the race replays thick and fast at the minute. Here's from Christian Lindgren's point of view around the outside of the Montreal hairpin, and all of a sudden a traffic jam. Les Stevenson gets caught up with Nico Kumpu. Christian Romano, I think, got got caught up in that one as well. And Les Stevenson, of course, down to P38 overall, so he's been really affected by this one. Keith Whittle, this is into the third turn, essentially almost seemingly forgets to take the apex and seems to bump. It looks like Nico Kumpu possibly round on the outside there. Meanwhile, Mike Redford is having to filter his way through all of this chaos after starting from the pit lane. More race replays coming at you here. Let's have a look. Nico Kumpu. Meanwhile, this is into what looks like the corner before the Bentley straight, and a hip and shoulder from Matthew Malcolm there. That was through Williams before coming out, of course, on to the Bentley straight. And a big one there. I'm not sure who that was. That looked like Marco Facuccio maybe across the grass. Aaron Jackson maybe caught up in that one. Meanwhile, Mike Redford trying to go up the inside of the bomb hole. Maybe a little touch there between the M2, but that looks like a big one. Let's have a look from the helicam coming in. Of course, oh, Hubert Hauser actually on that one. Bumped into the back of Marco Facuccio. Almost looked like a brake pedal failure there, Dan.
Yeah, really interesting to see what happens as we see another race replay, and the chaos absolutely commences here at Snetterton. Kevin Boss in the Aston Martin, just a little loft step there. Nothing really serious happens, but chaos has absolutely commenced here, John, on the Snetterton circuit. I almost predicted it, but yeah, the live stewards didn't really have it busy at the World Tour. Well, they sure have it busy now at Snetterton for this multi-class race, as we see Martin Ulrich just a little loft tap as well, door banging with the Ginetta there, as Andy Boardman is also trying to make some profit of that, and indeed he is on the inside by Jordan Daly. Can Jordan Daly keep his momentum on the outside there? Jordan Daly on the inside, and the Boardman on the outside. Race replay here. We can see Matt Malcolm in the Mercedes trying to pass a BMW. Let's see what happens here. Doesn't really seem to happen anything. So Matt Malcolm overtakes that BMW M2, and well, all hell is breaking loose, John, because of those incidents. We have some GT4s at the back with the BMW M2. Of course, Mike Redford started in pit lane. It's a Ginetta and Martin Ulrich sending it down the inside. Really brave, just overshot it a little bit, and that gives Andy Boardman the chance to attack Jordan Daly. Jordan Daly currently in P3, and the Boardman had a great start currently in P2, and Najee Goat has absolutely run away from this group of cars. This is Richard Whittle making a little bit of contact against some door banging. Rubbing is racing, they say, and we'll sure see enough of that today, and we have seen already almost enough currently. Richard Whittle on the inside, that is. Little bit of contact again, but that move is fairly well done by them. I don't think the stewards will have a look at that. And Christian Lidgren, the Swedish driver, currently in P20, and we see the Mercedes of Matt Malcolm already passing those BMW C2s. And with 55 minutes remaining, it almost looks like we already had 20 minutes of racing because of all the chaos. It's absolutely incredible, John.
Yeah, fantastic stuff here today at Snetterton. And I mean, we did say, didn't we, in the kind of qualifying and pre-show, you know, Monday multi-class madness, certainly living up to its name with the old school nature of the Snetterton circuit. Of course, Mike Redford trying to make his way through the GT4s with Matthew Malcolm in tow as well. But meanwhile, it looks very, very congested in the GT4 category here at the head. Of course, we've got Emo Plate in the Audi, followed closely by Carlos Calatayud, Christian Klipper. We've got Ted Edwards, Rob Franken, Yao Manzo, Matt Stevens, everybody bunched together as they come through the middle sector. You know, different manufacturers. All these cars are going to have different advantages all across the circuit. And now we see the legs, of course, of the M4 GT4. We spoke about it in the Red Bull Ring. It had fantastic straight line speed, and I'm sure it's not going to be a problem here as Emo Plate dives off to try and defend from Carlos Calatayud. Pinches him through the chicane sector. There's a bump in the background from Rob Franken into Ted Edwards, and Yao Manzo bumped into Rob Franken, and Rob Franken stops on the inside of the corner. Up the inside, Christian Klipper on Emo Plate. Carlos Calatayud is going to try and get through as well, but of course the single line through Coram, there's no way to go really around the outside. Up the inside, it's a very kind of single filed natured corner. If you're lucky, you can maybe fire it up the inside into Murray's, but nothing be happening here. In the background though, looks like Matt Stevens put a move on Adam Carlisle, but possibly Matt Stevens there missing out on the exit, but he does get the Cayman back under control, and just behind Yao Manzo in the background there. Christian Clippert, meanwhile, into P5 at the helm of the grid. This is a race replay of Mike Redford, it seems, and Matthew Malcolm just ahead there of the M2 category. I think they've cleared every single car. I'm just looking down the list now. They are at the back of the GT4 field, so the next cars they're going to catch will be the back end of the GT4 train. Meanwhile, in the background there, Rob Franken and of course Mike Redford, but from the helicam, there's a touch between Carlos Calatayud and Emo Plate, and that allowed Christian Clippert up the inside through the bomb hole into Coram. And of course another race replay here, Yao Manzo and Matt Stevens. This is what I saw in the background. Matt Stevens, of course, trying to use the Porsche to its advantage. That's RPMS on RPMS camp, friendly fire there. That's something you don't do. But again, the RPMS guys putting on a great show, just like the Sim brothers do. Meanwhile, into the Montreal hairpin, Martin Ulrich gets a touch from behind again. Carlos Calatayud. I think this must have been a couple of laps ago, because Christian Clippert, of course, in the mix, and that's what caused the bottleneck that we saw that began the GT4 fight in the middle sector. Another race replay here. They're coming in thick and fast today. This is down into Agostini on the exit. Emo Plate just tries to cut back across, and there's a Chevrolet Camaro in the way. More contact to be had there. Both drivers, of course, spinning out to the inside line. And I'm being told in my ears by Ash Bibby we are up to date on race replays. But Dan, it's going to be a manic one for the stewards today.
Yes, as we see another race replay, Christian Romano possibly some door banging, some more door banging, and that's a little bit too much door banging, and Christian Romano goes off into the grass, and so they'll lose a lot of time. But yes, a lot of race replays, and of course we've had an entertaining race so far. The drivers possibly haven't got an entertaining race so far. They're probably fed up with all the collisions and incidents they have already seen. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one for sure, and those 50 minutes absolutely flew by, and I can't wait to see the remaining 50 minutes, because if they'll be as exciting as this one. I wrote a lot of facts, but I wonder if I need to use those information bits. Probably not, as we see another BMW M2 fight. I can see a lot of damage at almost every car, some rear damage, some front damage. It's insane, and they will definitely compromise your lap times. And of course we saw Mike Redford started in pit lane, but because of all the chaos, he might be better off, you know. Everyone almost stopped at this turn at some point, and Mike Redford probably had he said, well, okay, if you guys are gonna crash, etc., then I'll have some advantage with that. And so Mike Redford probably happy with all those collisions and fights, and we can still see this fight of the BMW M2s. And we see Grim Lilith, the driver with the controller, just passing the Porsche of Matt Stevens, that is, but Matt Stevens really well to keep it going there, as he is at the outside, so he needs to give Matt Stevens some room. Actually, he is on the inside. Matt Stevens currently on the inside, and there's some great fighting there. Almost John, the first clean fight we have seen today. Grim Lilith currently in the McLaren beautifully overtook Matt Stevens, but it seems to me that McLaren has got some great legs compared to that Porsche, and I can hear already some more incidents are coming our way, so more replays. As we can see, more race replay here. We see Spodus Skrillex qualified on pole last time. Just a little touche, is it enough to lose it? No, it isn't, but it might get investigated by the stewards, who knows. We see Christian Lindgren, the Swedish driver, they are currently in P21. This is not Spodus Skrillex, this is Matt Stevens and Grim Lilith, just a little touche, and that's probably where the fight began. Matt Stevens on the outside, really brave to keep it around the outside, but it just wasn't enough to keep Grim Lilith behind him, and so Grim Lilith, currently in the 511 McLaren, is still in front.
Yeah, incident in turn one currently ongoing. Lots of yellow and white flags. That's between, I guess, all of the M2s, judging by the darker blue circles on the maps. I'm sure we're going to have a race replay coming in for you. Rob Franken, seems to have retired to the pit lane. It's not, of course, a scheduled pit stop if he has come down the lane. but certainly so the Mercedes driver back to the garage briefly. Of course, we do have a pit window here tonight, 30-minute pit window, as we see. That's what kicked off in turn 1. It was Ted Edwards, and it looked like Adam Carlisle, MO plate, of course, there, and Rob Frankens just called it a day, and into the Armco, back to the pit lane he goes. I don't think he's going to be taking any further part. Here's a bit of a longer replay coming down into Riches, and that was a very big lunge coming from very far back indeed, and then Ted Edwards steaming in like the bulldozer, just ploughing everybody out of the way, and the giant Chevrolet Camaro there, and of course fully sending it into the first corner. Initial T coming back almost for a second episode here as he tucks in now behind Bren Jones. That's a very scary thought, isn't it, being in the Ginetta with Ted Edwards just behind you in the Camaro, but nonetheless this should be a good fight. I was going to say it's going to be a very busy pit lane, of course, with a 30-minute pit window for all drivers to make their mandatory stop, and the only requirement being, of course, to add 1 litre of fuel. All drivers, of course, the tyre choice is completely up to them, so again we might see some drivers taking some tyres for that extra 5 seconds. A lot of drivers tend to split the race half and half the fuel at the start and tyres, half the fuel at the end, and a fresh set of boots. I'm not sure we'll see all drivers going all the way through on 1 set of tyres today, although with the amount of damage in the field, Dan, could be making some good places if your name's Mike Redford. Yeah, you've kept that McLaren very clean through the opening stint.
Yes, indeed. I mentioned him earlier in this race, and it almost goes for every car. If you have kept your nose clean and you have avoided all the carnage and haven't picked up any damage, indeed, you will probably gain some time in the pit lane. And of course, let's see what everyone has done with fuel strategy. Could also come into play later this race. I expect everyone to change some tires. These GT4s and the BMWs aren't the kindest on your tires, and we can see Spoda Skrillex fighting for P2. He qualified P1 last time, is P2 currently, and so he will probably want to get that P1 of Lindgren, but the number 48 BMW is a tough cookie to crack, and so Spoda Skrillex will do everything he can to close up that gap and possibly attack the BMW M2 in front of him, because the gap behind them is quite large. It's 4 seconds, so they won't have any problems with looking in their rear view mirrors. Kevin Boss probably will, because he has Mike Redford absolutely charging through the field in his rear view mirror. Kevin Boss also has some front damage on that Aston Martin as he's trying to chase down Brendan Jones, the one of 2 Ginettas here in the GT4 field. The 421 Ginetta is doing fine and is trying to possibly attack Ted Edwards in the Chevrolet. I expected Edwards to also have picked up some damage, and we can see Kevin Boss definitely did pick up some damage, and he has Mike Redford behind him, so he'll possibly be looking in his rear view mirror again. With 45 minutes to go, I expect in about 15 minutes to 20 minutes we'll see some pit stops. And in almost all the sessions I've done commentary, the track temperature has always gone down, but it's actually gone up this time. Track temperature was 21 degrees, it is currently 22 degrees, and that's not the best for the grip, so you'll probably have some more time loss with the damage, because of course some damage causes understeer, some damage causes massive oversteer, and when the grip gets lowered, that effect only gets multiplied. And you can see it on a straight. Mike Redford in the McLaren just has the legs on that McLaren, because Kevin Boss in the Aston Martin is slightly damaged, does have a slipstream of the Ginetta, so it might be enough to keep Mike Redford at bay for a few more laps. Jordan Bobbins in the Alpine is driving a fairly well race actually, so he probably also made some advantage I also hear he's been involved in no crashes, so Jordan Bobbins absolutely doing great to avoid that massive massacre at the start, and currently in P16. He'll probably be delighted with himself. We still have 44 minutes to go, so quite a long time for Jordan Bobbins to either lose that P16 or maybe gain some time. You can see some BMW M2 action here. A little touche, probably will get investigated by the stewards, but Orlich loses a position, maybe even more to the yellow car. Actually, it was Orlich who gained a position, and we have one more replay. We see Christian Romano coming at the back of the other BMW. A little touche there. Does the BMW in the red lose it? No, he doesn't, and so he loses a little bit of positions. Cristiano Romano had quite some overspeed in that BMW, and the other Italian, Marco Facuccio, he got one place down, and so lost a position and needs to keep his rear viewers mirror. Oh, we have a massive incident at the back. That is with Phil Roberts and another BMW M2. Maybe we'll get a race replay of that soon enough. That's an interesting incident, as if we hadn't seen enough chaos already, John.
Yeah, I think that could be either Phil Roberts or maybe one of the Whittles. I think they both picked yellow cars today, but it could be Phil. He is back in the pit lane, so it's definitely not Keith Whittle on that one. Richard Whittle, I think, is in the 957, but Phil Roberts, I think that was the 225 we saw go spearing off in the background, of course, of Nelson, the tight right-hander. Looked like he'd lost it already through Brundle, and by the time he arrived at Nelson, he was facing drivers left instead of drivers right. Pit lane has been open for 2 minutes. We've had some early stoppers coming into the lane already in the form of Grim Lilith and, of course, Adam Carlisle, with the big impact into turn one that we saw just a few laps ago. And meanwhile, Mike Redford charging through the field. He's now arrived on the back of Bren Jones, gets a fantastic run out of Williams on to the Bentley straight, of course, Twitch handle across the rear wing of Mike Redford's car. Go and check him out on Twitch. And of course, up the inside he goes through Brundle and has it covered off by the time he gets to Nelson. A little bit too much speed though, carrying in to Nelson. Nearly lost the back end, and Kevin Boss closed up very quickly on the back of Bren Jones. So Jones maybe not getting to grips with that Ginetta as much as they'd liked, but Kevin Boss, of course, nursing some understeer with the front end damage on that Aston Martin. Meanwhile, we're going to have a look at Mike Redford's car, see if we can spot any damage here. Of course, MYK Red with 2Ds 95, that's his handle over on Twitch. Go and check him out and see his point of view from today's event. But the McLaren looking relatively clean, considering it was a pit lane start, charging all the way through the M2s, all the way through the chaos, and somehow managed to make it out completely unscathed. So Mike Redford certainly looking to pick up some more positions as we see Bren Jones come into the pit lane last time by. So that's freed up Kevin Boss just behind there to try and follow Mike Redford towards Ted Edwards. Some 4 seconds to the good up the road, and some achievements there on the roof of Mike Redford's car. This is, of course, the last kind of titles he got through 2023. Very accomplished driver with us here at RCI. And if you'd like to be the same as Mike Redford and try and get some titles of your own to put on your car skin roof, then, of course, head on over to the website racerci.com, where you can get involved anytime, day or night, with us here at RCI. And, of course, pre-qualify if needed for any events, but I'm pretty sure the majority of the events at the moment do not require pre-qualifying, as we've got some more race replays coming in thick and fast. This is Bren Jones on Kevin Boss into the last corner. It looks like Bren Jones just took a defensive line, cut the curb, and that's Bubbins' first touch as well. It's not incident free for Jordan Bubbins anymore in the Alpine. Very unfortunate there. Almost kind of commentator's curse as Bren Jones comes back over, and you're almost better kind of aiming for the rear of Bren Jones's car, because of course the front end's going to the left, so if you aim for the rear you might actually miss that one entirely, but hindsight's a wonderful thing. Bren Jones and Adam Carlisle have found themselves on circuit, of course, due to the mandatory pit stop. Adam Carlisle probably with a lengthy stop due to fixing some damage from the turn 1 incident. But just look at that track map on the right hand side, Dan. It's absolutely chocker with cars through the first and second sectors, and then it kind of thins out towards the third. But this is exactly what we said earlier on in the broadcast. It's all about kind of traffic management, picking your battles, and of course having the confidence to go for those moves and trusting, if anything, other drivers around you to be aware of what's going on.
And how much confidence do you have, especially with those crashes, as we see some overtaking between classes here? The GT4s trying to lap the BMW C2s, and it's not as smoothly going for Brent Jones in the Ginetta. He goes up the inside of the BMW M2, has a little bit more speed, of course, is in the faster class, and therefore can quite easily overtake that BMW M2 in the second to last turn. Brent Jones, the Wills driver, already has made his pit stop. He's one of the first of the GT4s, together with Lilith Carlisle, to make a pit stop, and it sets you back a little bit in traffic, and you can see it. And so I guess Brent Jones will definitely lose some time with the traffic. He has cleared it, so he's got a few BMWs M2s ahead of him, but I am just wondering if that's maybe a little bit of an early stop. Of course, Brent Jones could had some damage, so he wanted to get that repaired really quickly, but he had a touche a few laps earlier, so he might have some damage still. But I just wonder if that's the right call, if they could have stayed out a little bit longer, and so by doing so avoided the traffic. As we can see, Carlisle is now slowly coming up to the back of Brent Jones, and we can see the Spanish driver of the number 30 Mercedes now challenging that big powerful BMW. But to be fair, that Mercedes seems to be keeping up, so possibly that BMW has had some damage, or the Mercedes is just as fast on a straight line, especially with a toe of that big powerful BMW. And it could be that we see a challenge for P6 and P5 here, because the Spanish driver is getting close very quickly, and so we'll see in a few moments time. Last time we streamed 2 days ago the World Tour, the first event of the World Tour. We didn't do that only on YouTube, we did it also on Twitch. So if you have a minute or two, go over to your Twitch channel, sub it on the RCI channel, and possibly you can watch the next World Tour event on Twitch instead of YouTube if you'd like to. Back to the action here. The Spanish driver of the number 30 Mercedes is still trying to challenge, possibly having some disadvantages with the dirty air. It's not as increased the dirty air as example for a GT3 or a GT2. These GT4s have slightly a lower downforce and a little bit of less downforce compared to a GT3, so you might have some disadvantages with the dirty air, but it's not as massive if you were driving a GT3 as you go. Currently 2.8 seconds in the lead, and if I'm not wrong, that lead has shrunken a little bit, and Andy Boardman in that Mercedes is really fast and coming close to Azure Goat. Behind that is Jordan Daly, but we see Azure Goat coming in for a pit stop already, and that's really early. 36 minutes still to go, and I'm just wondering, John, is an early stop a right call on Snetterton?
I mean, it could be, couldn't it? Which, as soon as you catch the M2s, you know you're going to hemorrhage time. And, of course, Azure Goat has done just that. The lead was over 4 seconds at one point to Andy Boardman, and that gap, of course, came down to about 2 seconds to the good by the time Azure Goat came into the pit lane. So, lots of time lost, of course, in the M2 traffic. And that's something you don't want as a GT4 driver, of course, as we see John Racer lurking in the background here, follow it with Yao Manzo, and of course just ahead Carlos Calata Yurt has found their way through. So John Racer dispatches of Aaron Jackson. He's then got to get through Keith Whittle as well, which in theory should be able to do on the run between the next two corners of Palmer. And of course Agostini tucks back in to the racing line. Meanwhile, Yao Manzo's got to do just that. Bit hesitant, and there's contact between Len M2 and John Racer. A Racer gets turned in Agostini. Yao Manzo goes through. Aaron Jackson also picks up the position, and that's very unfortunate. Keith Whittle there, and John Racer has gone back to the pit lane. Garage door has come down almost immediately, and I don't think John Racer will take any further part in tonight's action. Such a shame there. Just looked like a misjudging of the braking, of course, from Keith Whittle. TV cameras there doing us a little bit dirty up here in the broadcasting booth, but it looked like, of course, the slipstream given off the back of the McLaren was just enough to, give Keith Whittle a few more kilometers an hour on the braking zone into Agostini, picked his usual point, and of course when you're a couple of kilometers too fast, ABS is very intrusive in these M2s, even on the lower setting. Of course, they're designed to be a very kind of cup beginner friendly car, and of course the car just does not want to stop. Very unfortunate there into the back of John Racer. Meanwhile, on board with Les Stevenson here, of course, got mixed up in a few first turn accidents, had to come all the way from the back of the grid essentially as dispatches of Alexander Orlix in the 587. Alexander, of course, giving him the position, knows when knows when there's no point to fight another car, lets Les Stevenson through, and of course he will go through to try and claw back some more positions. If you haven't already, I'd suggest you ask Les what a Roker Poker is, and I'm sure he'll be thrilled to tell you the story, but it's not one that's going to come from me, especially on a family-friendly broadcast, as Les Stevenson toils away there to try and get forwards again. Hubert Hauser, the next car on his list of enemies, should we say, to try and catch, as just ahead he does have the M2 of Callum Kerrigan. Of course, that's not for position either. Again, Callum Kerrigan is all the way up in P23 overall, almost P5 or 6 I think in class, if my fast counting down the timing board is as such. So yeah, big ask for Les Stevenson to try and claw some points back for this race, although has already pitted, so essentially when everybody else ahead pits, should gain back a few more positions. Meanwhile, Azure Goat has served his stop. He's come out in P5, so first of the cars on the road that has pitted is currently in P5. Christian Clipper down in P9, also pitted. Jan Manzo, Matt Stevens, Grim Lilith, and Matthew Malcolm, to name a few. Brent Jones, of course, Adam Carlisle also have pitted. So still plenty of pit stops to get through, Dan. We're yet to see a speeding penalty in pit lane for tonight, especially with the tricky pit entry, and of course I doubt we're going to see many drive-throughs tonight. So again, in theory, time lost tonight in the pit lane is only going to be for damage, and with everybody carrying some kind of damage, do you even bother fixing it at this point, Han?
If you watch the World Tour, you could see at the beginning everyone coming down in pit lane at the same time. It's not like that here in the TCX and the GT4 multi-class race. But to answer your question, John, it depends really on how long it is, how much time are you losing per lap. Is it a second? That is used, so it might be worth fixing. But is it 2/10? Is it 1/10? Purely maybe on a little bit of straight line speed, you could say, I'm gonna ignore that damage, or possibly fix some suspension damage only if you have to. We can still see those GT4 drivers managing the BMW C2 cars, and we're gonna see that for whole the race. We have had such a chaotic start that the BMWs and the GT4s are spread everywhere across the circuit. It's almost like they started at different places here at Snetterton, and so we're gonna be entertained with some multi-class battles for some wild, and Matt Malcolm is also trying to get him up a GT4 spot. We can see Spoda Skrillex currently leading the BMW TCX class. Oh, and that's Malcolm overtaking Carlisle. Carlisle going wide, not happy with that overtake, and so he is flashing his lights to Malcolm and see if Adam Carlisle maybe can get that position back of that Scottish driver, but I doubt it. Malcolm already did his pit stop duties, and so he can only gain unless he makes a mistake, of course. We see a race replay probably of that incident. Adam Carlisle on the inside turns to be the outside, and it looked like maybe Adam Carlisle just turned in a little bit too soon. However, that is up to the stewards to decide. But that's an interesting incident. We have seen plenty of incidents so far. We've had a chaotic start, and the chaos is still commencing, and it looks like it won't stop with doing so. For the rest of the race, we have some GT4 action there. Mike Redford getting pushed off by Ted Edwards there, and so Andy Portman could also try and overtake the McLaren that started from pit lane. But we have oh, that's Jordan Daly actually. That's not Ted Edwards. Excuse me, Jordan Daly just going wide, losing possibly some positions and needing to let Mike Redford go, possibly even Andy Portman. Andy Portman on the outside just does Jordan Daly on the outside and makes it a beautiful move for, I think it is P6 currently. Probably P7 indeed, And so Andy Bobbin, beautiful overtake. We have some more action here in the GT4 back. Mike Redford doing the switchback on that is Gao Manso in the Chevrolet Camaro probably. And so we have a lot of action here. Actually, that is Jordan Daly in the Chevrolet Camaro battling Mike Redford. The other one was indeed Ted Edwards. Andy Boardman always in the rear view mirror of these cars. He's slowly creeping up to them, and then suddenly, bam, he makes a move and overtakes the car. And he could well do so at Mike Redford. Spoken about Mike Redford, he hasn't made a pit stop, but he has made his way all the way up to a provisional P6. And mind you, he started in pit lane. So Mike Redford doing really well to keep that P6, as we almost see an incident with BMW M2. Andy Boardman sends it, and I said it last time, he immediately comes in and clears Mike Redford because he hasn't made his pit stop yet. And so therefore Andy Boardman might think Mike Redford is only traffic at this point. I have to get by him as quickly as possible and chase down Jordan Daly for that 5th or 4th place. That's a really well done move by Andy Boardman, and I expect to see more of him soon. And with 28 minutes to go, everything can still happen. And we will see some race replays coming in soon, because we have, of course, 28 minutes remaining, and we still have a lot of action to go through. What's happening here, John?
Yeah, let's have a look at this race replay. This is between Redford and Andy Boardman. Of course, we just saw it on the broadcast. This is going into Williams, of course. Boardman with a late lunge up the inside of Redford. Didn't quite see him coming and kind of almost turned the car in, as we see Redford and Ted Edwards peeling off into the pit lane. That's going to free up Andy Boardman to chase to the back of Jordan Daly. And meanwhile, it looks like Martin Ulrich has cleared his pit stop. He is out of the pits. Meanwhile, we've got stop go 30 for Matthias Byron. I'm going to turn to the stewards, and frantic note scribbling still going down. And of course, we're over halfway into the race, and they have only just digested the first couple of laps. So that proves how much chaos did ensue at the beginning, and they are going to be working, I can assure you, probably after the race, going through all of these incidents. So I'm going to hit it from the top. Of course, McKenna McConnell, our head steward tonight, reporting back to us. So lap 1, turn 2, that was the big one into Montreal, involving the 888, the 511, the 222, the 699, the 48, the 65, and the 200. It was a stop go 30 for the 888. Multi-car takeout, dangerous driving, causing further damage and not holding the brakes. Positions not given back. Lap 1, turn 2, involving the 46, the 40, the 256, and the 60. That was deemed as a racing incident. All contacts deemed to be unavoidable due to track blocking accident ahead of them. We then have a lap 1, turn 3. So this is going into Palmer between the 157 and the 96. It's a drive-through for the 157 for taking out the 96 with position not returned. We then have a lap 1, turn 7 involving the 199 and the 256. So 5 seconds for the 199 of Matthew Malcolm for avoidable contact. Lap 1, turn 8 involving the 79, the 20 and the 225. It's a stop go 10 for the car 79 for a multi-car takeout. And that is all I have from the stewards at the moment. Of course, we're on lap 17. They are only just digesting lap 1. And we all know what kicked off after lap 1 as well. So plenty of incidences to go through. Very unfortunate for those guys. But if you do want to give the stewards a hand at any given point, and you thought, I want to get into this RCI community malarkey and see what it's all about, whether or you want to become a steward, a broadcaster, or a commentator, we do have a staff vacancies board open in our Discord. So head on over, find the staff vacancies, have a scroll through all of the descriptions, and if anything suits your kind of talent pool, or your, sounds like your kettle of fish, then be sure to contact the relevant people within RCI to put your name forward. Of course, full training will be provided. We won't just throw you in at the deep end and, we'll pair you with somebody very competent. Ash Bibby saying, yes, we will, in my ears. No, we won't, Ash. You know that. You had full training from the beginning. And, of course, Ash Bibby is, even gone on from being a broadcaster to an event manager as well now. So, the possibilities are endless here at RCI. So jump on into the Discord if you do want to get involved with us here. Meanwhile, Jordan Daly fending off Andy Boardman still in the Chevrolet Camaro. There's a little bit of traffic ahead. I think that's in the form of one of the RPMS cars. Andy Boardman looks very confident through Williams, trying to set himself up. Daly there maximising the slipstream off the back of the M2, cuts across almost immediately in front to try and break the toe of the Aston Martin as they head up towards Brundle and Nelson. I don't think Jordan Daly's going to give him too much space, but Jordan Daly, 5-second penalty just popped up next to his name. I'm going to cast my eye over to the stewards channel again to see if we can find anything, and my oh my, what a plethora of incidents have come through. We got a few of racing incident minor contacts, but the one for Jordan Daly that we're kind of watching at the moment, it was a lap 2, turn 4, involving the 41 and the 197. It's a 5-second penalty for the 197 for overtake with contact on the 41 with position not returned. That was with Martin Ulrich in the Ginetta. We've got a few more racing incident minor contacts coming through, involving, of course, Andy Boardman and Jordan Daly back on lap 2, turn 8 and turn 7. So these guys have already been in the wars with each other, and now they find themselves 24 minutes before the end fighting for the bottom step of the podium. Meanwhile, this is Hubert Hauser and Azure Goat, and it looks like Hauser's just kind of forgotten to brake for Nelson into the back of Azure Goat, and of course behind it looked like possibly Jordan Bubbins in the Alpine getting tripped up, and it certainly was as they came through. Nelson, of course, checked up nearly to a stop, and then the M2 behind just not able to match the braking performance of the Alpine. Very unfortunate there. That was Jordan Bubbins indeed, and Spoda Skrillex was the other car involved in that one. Meanwhile, Tim Ireland and I believe Matt Stevens wanting to get a move on, just misjudges the cutback on our very own event admin Tim Ireland. He's really been in the wars today in the BMW M2, and contact between the 141 and of course Matt Stevens in the number 77, and Tim Ireland nearly coming a cropper again through the first turn. Matthias Byron trying to make up those all-important positions after his penalty. I think he's just served. Of course, he's put himself out of contention a little bit more as well. But Stewart's only up to lap 2, Dan. Of course, we're on lap 18 now. We're moving on through the race. And fingers crossed they do get all the reports done before the end.
Fingers crossed indeed, but I don't think it will happen. And who hasn't hit a car, who hasn't been in the wall, who hasn't touched the grass here today at Snetterton? It's insane the work that stewards need to do today. Of course, I guess it's a little compensation for the chaos we had on World Tour. We didn't quite see a lot of incidents, and well, you gotta compensate that, so the stewards are having it really busy with the race at Snetterton, and we only gotta praise them, because if it wasn't for them, if it wasn't for you viewers here, there was no point streaming an event. So again, we want to thank everyone behind not only this event, but behind every RCI event here, and because of that, the action rages on, as well as here on Snetterton. Christian Clippett with that powerful BMW is trying to battle one of 2 Ginettas here, and that BMW, of course, with the big engine, could possibly line up a move on the straight. We are in the middle part of the circuit, so the straight needs to wait a little bit for Christian Clippett in that BMW. Of course, Jordan Daly again has a 5-second penalty. Malcolm as well has a 5-second penalty. That'll be interesting to keep an eye on, because, well, as John said, the stewards aren't finalized with reviewing everything here on Snetterton. Snetterton, of course, got used by the RAF as an airfield from 1943 to 1948. Since then, it's been opened since 1951 as a racing circuit, and well, the rest is history, they say. And the virtual racing on Snetterton also goes on here with 21 minutes remaining. The virtual racing has not disappointed, and there's still a lot of action in the air, possibly with this battle here. Christian Clippett trying to fight the Ginetta, I want to say Alpine, the Ginetta of Ulrich here, and we can see that Kevin Bos and the Spanish driver Catalayud in P1. They haven't pitted, so they're the only GT4s that haven't pitted yet, and so it'll be interesting to see, especially where the number 30 Mercedes will come back if they do decide to pit. We can see some BMWs in the background pit as well, and we can see Andy Boardman still fighting the Chevrolet Camaro of Jordan Daly here. He might line up a move at the hairpin here. Let's see if he does. Possibly a switchback that the Aston Martin of Andy Boardman is really looking aggressive, but that is also because Andy Boardman, I think he knows his track, he's confident, and you can see that in his driving. Andy Boardman, he could line a move up everywhere on the track and he could make it stick, and so Jordan Daly really needs to keep an eye on his rear view mirror. Of course, still ahead because he has some upcoming BMWs in front of him, and so the multi-class mania is still going on, but it just looks like that Aston Martin possibly just doesn't have the legs on the straight to keep up with that BMW, so Andy Boardman has to do it all in the corners, and he's pretty close to Jordan Daly currently, but again on a little small straight that Aston Martin just doesn't have the exit power, but it might be enough. Currently he's at the bumper of Jordan Daly, might pull out at the last second. He could, will he will, and on the outside now he needs to make it stick. Maybe he could, Jordan Daly, later on the brakes, and so Andy Boardman just needs to wait a little bit more, and Jordan Daly, he can fend off Andy Boardman for a little longer as well. With 80 minutes remaining, this is a spicy battle to keep your eyes on. Track temperatures are still rising. Last time I checked it was 22 degrees, it is 23 degrees now, and it doesn't make it easier for the cars to search for some grip, because of course the GT4s have less downforce and are a little bit heavier than the GT3s, but it's an even worse story for those BMWs M2s as well. Oh, as we see a BMW M2 in the crosshair. Don't know what happened to that BMW. Can't figure out who it is as well. Jordan Bobbins, he was doing so well in the first stages of the race, but then sadly got collected in a few incidents, and it almost looks like almost no GT4 or car in the grid has been incident free here on the Snetterton circuit, and for us it's entertaining, but of course the drivers would want to avoid those incidents, but we'll probably see a lot of those more. Again, Jordan Bobbins did really well in the first stages of the race and sadly got collected, and we'll have a few of those similar stories at the front with the BMWs. Nico Kumpu doing really well, and I can see a battle for P3 in the BMW TCX class rage on. Nico Kumpu currently the Finnish driver in just inside the top 10 of the BMW TCX car class. John, have you been entertained so far?
I think I've been more than entertained so far here at Snetterton. It's, provided some action-packed, chaos, should we say, at the beginning, but it's turning into some really kind of formidable battles. Meanwhile, this one here on your screens at the moment between Jordan Daly in the Chevrolet and Andy Boardman just behind, of course, in the Aston Martin. Jordan Daly with a 5-second penalty to his name, so if you're unsure of how he's going to serve that, that is basically going to be added on to his time at the end of the race, as we see Carlos Calatayud come down the pit lane in the number 30 Mercedes. Meanwhile, these two go through Coram line of stern. Of course, Andy Boardman certainly looks very confident, as Dan was saying earlier, here at Snetterton. Jordan Daly, of course, a late sign-up for today's race, and Carlos Calatayud just to the left of your picture behind the timing tower. He's not going to beat the leaders off pit lane. He's just about got to the 50 board, and there goes Les Stevenson that we saw in the background earlier on. So Carlos Calatayud out in 5th position. Martin Ulrich gets the last minute jump there, and I think that could be maybe Christian Klipper in the mirror. It certainly is in that BMW M4, so we've now got a battle beginning to form for essentially P4 overall. Of course, Martin Ulrich in P4, the timing board yet to update. We'll do as we come through the first sector, but yeah, in and amongst all the chaos It's really kind of brought these cars back together that we saw earlier on, of course, in the 10-car train almost, when Emo Plate was at the head, almost like a cork in the bottle scenario for him as we see a race replay. This is between Brent Jones and Adam Carlisle going down into Brundle, and Nelson very clumsy indeed. Just misjudged the braking point. Brent Jones turned around and Carlisle waiting very graciously on the grass for Brent Jones to get back underway. Of course, big time loss for both of them. Big damage. It's going to be front end for the Aston, rear for the Ginetta as they come in. It just looked like Carlisle misjudged the braking point maybe of the Ginetta, just carried a little bit too much speed, and of course the ABS in these cars as well as the M2s being very intrusive, not allowing the brakes of course to fully reach their potential as you kind of brake and turn for Brundle. Meanwhile, a little bump there for Keith Whittle, that's Spoda Skrillex and Grim Lilith with big time loss there through Coram. They go possibly even more contact in the second half. Not sure if we're going to see a race replay of that here. We are indeed. This is kind of part two as we've got Spoda Skrillex around the outside. The Whittle just wedges itself wide ever so slightly. Grim Lilith sees a gap and sensibly goes for it to clear the pair. And of course, Whittle being the bigger loser of the two in that scenario. Spoda Skrillex, though, second position overall. We've not really touched on this all too much, but managed to get through the chaos of Montreal and somehow found their way into P2 overall of the M2s. Of course, Christian Lindgren, some 8.5 seconds up the road, pretty much untouchable after his getaway. And again, Azure Goat with a fantastic drive from the beginning. Of course, pole position, avoided all the chaos. We say qualifying is not always the most important thing of these events, but of course when you get to a track like Snetterton or Monza, maybe even Nürburgring, with that typical kind of pinch point corner in the opening lap, being a few positions ahead could be the difference between, of course, making it through the pack unscathed and maybe being in the sandwich as it starts to form and everybody begins to check up, and of course a few drivers at the back not quite realizing. Meanwhile, this is for position. Alexander Orlix and Nico Kumpu for Rebound Racing. They're going to draft their way into the first corner of Riches. Not sure if Nico Kumpu is going to have enough speed to draw alongside. It's a wheel to quarter panel as they go into Riches. Orlix there breaks a little bit earlier. Kumpu later on the brakes, although runs himself a little bit wide. Orlix is going to have the better run, and this is what I was speaking about earlier on. You can really get the run into the Montreal hairpin. Orlix gets the overlap. He's going to have to go the long way around, but he's outbraked himself a little bit too much, and Nico Kumpu with the tighter line manages to swoop around the inside. Meanwhile, Kevin Boss has caught these dueling too, so can Orlix now use Kevin Boss maybe, Dan, to open the door on Nico?
That's the beauty of multi-class racing. You can get a move done as a BMW, but then a GT4 can possibly intervene with the... Oh, and the GT4 will indeed intervene with the battler, Kevin Boss, coming in contact with the Polish driver that is, and Kevin Boss almost having so many damage previous, possibly suspension damage, not being able to keep that GT4 on the road. As we see a race replayer, Kevin Boss coming in really hot, possibly misjudging the speed of the BMW M2 or misjudging the speed of his own GT4. That results in an incident that will definitely get looked by the stewards. Nico Kumpu got touched there by Kevin Boss. He remains in P24 overall, so he didn't lose any positions, but he might lose any time. Possibly has damage. It was a pretty heavy impact for the bodywork to take, and so it's not something you want to see, not if you are Kevin Boss, and definitely not if you're Nico Kumpu. Last time we were racing on Imola, it was in my mind Spoda Skrillex who won indeed. It was Spoda Skrillex who got pole position. Victor Nordqvist won. The one that we are missing in the TCX class as we go to the overall standings is Rafael Hull. Won in Austria, got 18 points in Imola. We are missing him today on the grid. So Spoda Skrillex, Victor Nordqvist, Lee Stephenson, Nico Kumpu, Christian Lindgren, all those names can maybe get a little bit of an advantage on the overall standings compared to the leader, because of course the leader won't score any points today, as we see a beautiful battle still raged on for P2 in class. And also, I think, John, Andy Boardman doesn't really have to pass Jordan Daly, because Jordan Daly has a 5-second penalty. If he just stays behind, keeps his car outside the walls, doesn't make any contact with Jordan Daly, doesn't pick up any penalties, he can just stay behind Jordan Daly, and he has P2 in the pocket. Of course, it'd be nice to maybe close the gap to Azure Goat, but we all know Azure Goat. He's fast, he has the fastest lap already, so do you want to take the risk, if you're named Andy Boardman, to overtake that big Chevrolet Camaro of Jordan Daly? It's of course a question Andy Boardman is maybe asking the whole race, do I want to go for it or do I just stay behind? I can tell you, he is making Jordan Daly nervous with all the mirror checks he is giving the Camaro driver so far. Adam Carlisle is possibly also making Brent Jones nervous in one of two Ginettas. The 421 Ginetta is trying a lot to keep the Aston Martin of Adam Carlisle behind. Carlisle being involved already in an incident with the car in front. And of course he has a lot of damage, so that won't help his race result either. Currently in P16 overall and P16 in the GT4 class. Track temperature has risen to 24 degrees. All the more difficult for all the drivers to keep their car on tracks, because with higher temperature your grip is fading, and so it could cost a little bit of lap times and maybe some on-track performance as well. And Andy Bourdon might want to go for a move here. He will be on the outside, but maybe he has the legs on at Aston Martin to get a move on Jordan Daly. Finally, he's been stuck behind Jordan Daly for so long, but it's just not enough that Aston Martin just doesn't have the legs to outpower that Camaro of Jordan Daly. And so, like we've seen a lot of times, Jordan Daly stays in front, and Andy Boardman might get really tired of this fight because he just wants to move on. And they're not really slow either. They are on pace with Azure Goat. Azure Goat probably not taking too much risk to possibly lose that first position. But Andy Boardman with a clean nose, no damage whatsoever, is just can't quite overtake Jordan Daly. They are coming up behind BMW M2, so that might give a small opportunity, a small smell of blood for Andy Boardman to overtake the Camaro of Jordan Daly, but it seems to again just not be enough. Track temperatures aren't fast, they are optimum now, so that does help a little bit with the grip. But for now, Andy Boardman needs to search for a little bit more grip on his Aston Martin to overtake Jordan Daly in P2.
Yeah, it's going to be a big ask, isn't it, for Andy Boardman to get past Daly? But like you said, Dan, Daly with the 5-second penalty. I mean, Boardman doesn't really have to try to get through Daly. He's just either got to keep with him or force him into a mistake that's of course going to allow him through maybe a misjudgment in some traffic. That could be his way through. But again, the 5-second time penalty, it's pretty much a P2 inherited as Daly goes a little bit wide into Oggies. That's going to open up the inside into Williams. Andy Boardman on the inside swoops through, but Jordan Daly already looking to try and do the cutback and grab the legs of the Chevrolet Camaro off the corner. Side by side, they will go down the Bentley straight into Brundle. This is going to be very hairy. 2 into 1 doesn't always go, as we've seen previously in this race. Andy Boardman to the inside, Daly to the outside. Boardman watches a little bit wide, pinches into Nelson. Daly over the grass, over the curb, and both drivers with very big time loss here. Daly comes out on top, but only just about, and I'm not sure if there was any contact there, but that was very, very scary indeed for both drivers. That could have been race ending almost. But look in the background, Martin Ulrich is going to have seen that unfold. He's going to have seen the yellow flags waved by the marshals as he came into Brundle. So this could all become undone very, very quickly for both of these drivers if they are not careful. If they allow Martin Ulrich in, Ulrich doesn't really have anything to lose and certainly a lot to gain. And just behind Martin Ulrich, of course, 1.4 seconds to the good, Carlos Calatayud, a second to the good behind him, Christian Klipper. So we could, of course, be bringing in 3 cars into this fight for essentially the middle step of the podium. And Stewart's catching up very frantically indeed. McKenna McConnell firing pieces of paper through, and contact for Redford and the number 48. That's the race leader in the M2 class. Very unfortunate there for Mike Redford, but Christian Lindgren taps Redford round. Big time loss again for both of these drivers. So I'm going to go from the top of what I've got so far. We've got a lap 3. Bear in mind we're on lap 27. Stewart's only just reporting lap 3 incidents at the moment, involving the 8, the 202, and the 222. It's a warning for the 222 a warning for the 202 for avoidable contact with the number 8. We then got lap 3, turn 10, involving the 71 and the 30. It's a warning for the 30 for avoidable contact. Lap 3, turn 12, involving the 222 and the 77. 5 seconds for the 77. That's Matt Stevens for avoidable contact. Lap 4, turn 4, involving the 71 and the 8. It's a drive-through for the number 8. Takeout for position unable to be returned. So the number 8, I'm just trying to scroll down the screen, it's Ted Edwards. He has since served that drive-through penalty. And then we've got a lap 4, turn 4, involving the 40 and the 99. So 5 seconds for the number 40 for forcing another car off track. We then got an incident on lap 5, turn 6, involving the 77 and the 511. Racing incident, minor contact. And then lap 5, turn 4, involving the 200 and the 48. It's a 5 seconds for the number 48 for contact overtake with contact. That is Christian Lindgren, your race leader that we just saw get muddled up in an incident. And Spoda Skrillex is about 2.1 seconds behind him. So Spoda Skrillex could be on for the top step of the podium once these penalties work themselves out. Meanwhile, Callum Kerrigan down in what appears to be about P5 or 6 once again, just behind Richard Phillips and of course Tom Shipston, the RPMS boys there, and the cursed Epic Sax guy on the back of this car. I'd completely forgotten about this from the last broadcast, but Ash Bibby clearly hasn't and is reminding me, and all I'm hearing now in my head is the Epic Sax guy nodding away on YouTube for 10 hours on loop. So thank you very much indeed, Callum Kerrigan, on that one. Callum Kerrigan has his sights set, I think, on an RPMS car just ahead. It is Richard Phillips, 1.2 seconds to the good. So again, if Phillips makes a mistake, that could be Callum Kerrigan through with another position. But it all looks like it's relatively calmed down now, Dan. I don't want to commentators curse it all too much, but gaps have been kind of opening up around it. I've certainly cursed it. Jordan Daly, of course, 10 seconds to the good off the back of your goat. Andy Boardman sticking with him. Ulrich about a second behind. Carlos Calatayud has closed up the gap. Christian Clipper has dropped a second in the last lap or so. And Yao Manzo, of course, 11 seconds to the good, so completely out of contention with the top 5. Meanwhile, Adam Carlisle still battling Bren Jones. We saw these two battling just a few, 10, 15 minutes or so ago, I'd say, as they had a coming together through Nelson, Brundle and Nelson. And again, the position has not changed, so Bren Jones still leads Adam Carlisle as a dispatch of Nico Kumpu. But Christian Lindgren, the interesting one there, Dan, 5 seconds to the good. Spoda Skrillex within 2.5 seconds. 3 minutes on the clock, just under. Can Christian Lindgren pull out 3 seconds in 3 minutes, as we might see a move on here for the Lycan Racing up the inside of the Montreal hairpin? Does he get it drawn up in time? A touch of the grass, bounces over, almost parks it in front of Bren Jones, but a very good move indeed. Probably one of the cleanest we've seen in the race. But meanwhile, Bren Jones looking to try and come back into Palmer, although not really a corner that we see all too many moves made. And Adam Carlisle holds the outside line, and well done indeed. So Adam Carlisle, in theory, should be able to stretch his legs ahead of Bren Jones. Meanwhile, the battle's hotting up here, isn't it? We've got Jordan Daly, we've got Andy Boorman and Martin Ulrich now all locked together. Said it earlier on, but 2 minutes on the clock as Andy Boorman goes wide. He gets a slide on. Martin Ulrich gets the run out of Palmer down to Agostini. He's going to have to go the long way around the Ginetta, the far superior car on the brakes, and M2 ahead of Marco Fukushia bails onto the grass, wants nothing to do with this lead battle. And line of stern back again. Jordan Daly, Andy Boorman and Martin Ulrich. Time is running out though, Dan.
You definitely cursed it, John. So if all hell breaks loose again, you know against who you can file a protest. John Dalton, commentary cursed. You have heard it here first. So back to the action. Aston Martin of Andy Boardman is still trying to defend that P3 and also possibly trying to attack that P2. And you know who's going to be absolutely furious with Andy Boardman? It's Jordan Daly, the Chevrolet driver right here. He has lost so much time. If they didn't make a mistake, didn't have an incident, Jordan Daly would be fine for P3 now. But now he might even lose that P5, might even lose that P6 if Christian Clifford can close down that gap to the car in front of him. That's the number 30 Mercedes driven by Spanish driver Calatayud. And so Jordan Daly will be absolutely furious going into this last lap, because yes, ladies and gentlemen, Asher Goat has crossed the line in P1, and so now we are going in for the last lap. Jordan Daly will definitely lose his P2 if nothing crazy happens. Andy Boardman will be very delighted with that P2, and possibly Ulrich will get promoted up to P3 as well, and with the clock ticking down, there's well basically no room left for Jordan Daly to do anything to stretch that gap. It's simply impossible to, or I've cursed it now, but it's simply impossible to stretch that gap to 5 seconds. And maybe if Andy Boardman is greedy enough, he says, you know, I am going to finish P2 on the track as well. I'm gonna give it absolutely everything to overtake Jordan Daly, and Ulrich is giving it absolutely everything on as well to get that P3. And so if he overtakes Andy Boardman, he will get promoted up to P2. The Ginetta having very strong brakes, and he can use that in the middle part of the track. But after we reach the main or the back straight, it will be quite difficult for that Ginetta to do anything. Clock has officially ticked 0, so Asher Goat will be finishing really soon. Jordan Daly still defending from Andy Boardman, doesn't really seem a threat here, so the fight for P3 almost seems to have died out, and probably not a lot of drivers will file a report in John Dalton because, well, the chaos hasn't really commenced. And so the race is about to finish. As it goes, is winning the third round here, as we see another GT4 on the grass. As it goes will win the third round here in the multi-class season. Jordan Daly will come across the line, not as P2, possibly with a P5. Probably Andy Boardman will finish in second place, followed by the Ginetta of Ulrich in third place, the Mercedes driver of Catalut in fourth place, Christian Clifford in that powerful BMW, possibly being disappointed, gets a P6, Portuguese of Garmanzo also in the Chevrolet gets P7. Lilith then in the McLaren, a controller driver, finishes in P8. Stevens will finish in P10 because he's got a 5-second penalty, and the gap to Dutch driver Emmo Plate is 4 seconds, so Emmo Plate will get promoted up to P8, followed by Mike Redford. He started in pit lane behind all cars, almost avoided all the chaos, and it's gonna be a P10 for him. And by starting in the pit lane, I think Mike Redford will be really delighted with that result. As we can see, Ted Edwards just having a little bit of overstay, coming across the line in P11, just outside the top 10. Ted Edwards possibly will be a little bit disappointed by that. Kevin Boss has found himself in quite a few incidents this race. Finds himself in P12, just in front of Scottish driver Malcolm in the 199 Mercedes, and so the BMW TCX cars are also coming across the line. I can see that Lindgren indeed has won the third race in the TCX class, followed by Spoder Skrillex in second place, and Tom Shipston rounds off the podium in the TCX class. Not everyone has finished, the race has kind of died out, and John, we've had an absolute banger of the race, I can say.
Yeah, it's been certainly a very good race indeed. We still got some time penalties, of course, to sort through when the race ends. I think ACC then calculates where everybody sits. So you might see Jordan Daly, Stevens, Malcolm and Lindgren all move once the every car has finished. And there we go. Everybody has indeed shuffled. This is your final race results, of course, pending any further stewards' inquiries. And I say that because the last reports we had from the stewards were back on lap 14 is what I had on the board. So possibly some adjustments to be made on that one. But for now, Azure Go is, of course, your race winner. Andy Boardman does indeed overtake Jordan Daly, and Martin Ulrich does claim the third place. Even Carlos Calatayud managed to sneak an extra place from Daly. Had they not had the off, of course, at Brundle and Nelson, possibly Daly and Boardman could have steered clear from losing all of those positions. Christian Clipper, of course, in P6, Jan Manzo in 7th, Grim Lilith in 8th, Mo Plate in 9th, and Matt Stevens sneaks a P10. Mike Redford down in P11, Ted Edwards in P12, Kevin Boss, of course, P13, Matthew Malcolm in 14th, Brent Jones in 15th, Adam Carlisle in 16th, Jordan Bubbins in 17th, and there it is, your leader of the M2s. It was Christian Lindgren before the 5-second penalty came in, so that gives Spoda Skrillex the top step of the podium in the M2 class, and then Christian Lindgren will take second position. An honourable finish for Tom Shipston and Richard Phillips of the RPMS camp. Aaron Jackson managing to sneak a top 5 there. Callum Kerrigan, followed by Alexander Orlix. Nico Kumpu, it's going to be a round for him to forget. Sam Burnett mixed in with the M2s as well. He's had an absolute stinker of a race today. Matthias Byron in P27 overall. Richard Whittle, Tim Ireland, Les Stevenson only managing to claw back to 30th. Very unfortunate after that race start. Keith Whittle and Marco Fukusho will round out the checkered flagged finishers. Hubert Hauser unfortunately retired for about 7 laps before the end. John Aracer, Christian Romano, I didn't spot that retirement on lap 12. Rob Franken, of course, very early on in lap 5, and then Phil Roberts and Theobald Roskam unfortunately did not finish either. So a very action-packed race, should we say, tonight. Of course, Monday Multi-Class Madness living up to its name. And, of course, if you do want to get involved with us here at RCI, you can do so over on the website. That's racerci.com, where we have, of course, a lot of events going on at the moment. Midweek Masters continuing on Wednesday. They're heading to Hungaroring for round 2 with Team Monkey Racing beating RRP Racing Team Salvalu and RPMS Simsport in Pro. Meanwhile, in silver, it was still RPMS Simsport in 1 and 2 with Racing 25 years in 3rd. Friday, in theory, should see our KTM Masters beginning if sign-ups improve on this one. GT4 or GT2, pick your poison for this season of technical and underused tracks to really put your skills to the test. And there's no Saturday night out this week, very unfortunately. However, we are on a 1-week hiatus, returning, of course, on Saturday the 30th for round 5 at Alton Park. And there is a new event in the world of iRacing as well. After huge success for us in the first season of the IMSA series, signups are open for season 2 of the RCI iRacing IMSA series, featuring GTP, LMP2 and GTD, again for some multi-class madness. Season 2 will be returning to some of the most iconic tracks across America, but now featuring some of the greatest European tracks as voted for by the community. Round 1 beginning at Monza on Thursday, April 4th, so plenty of time to sign up for that one. Of course, on the calendar in the next few weeks, the Nordschleife on April 1st will come to ACC. That's exactly 2 weeks from today, and of course, RCI do have something in the pipeline for that one, I can assure you, so keep your eyes peeled on the website. A big thank you to all of you guys at home, of course, whether you've joined us, you've been here from the beginning, you're lurking, or you just dip in now and again to watch the streams back. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and 4,500 of you have subscribed to the YouTube channel already, and we thank you very much for that one. Of course, as Dan alluded to earlier in the broadcast, RCI_TV on Twitch, where most of our big events do happen. Of course, we casted the RCI World Tour dual casted between YouTube and Twitch on Saturday, so if you do prefer to watch over there, then of course drop us a follow and get a notification when we go live. And of course, they've been revolving around in the bottom left-hand side of your screen from the get-go. It's our partners, of course, AK Esports, a leading Italian company in esports management and organization across the world, working with brands such as Porsche Esports and, of course, the SRO Motorsports Group and Dallara, among many other brands, including us here at RCI with our service solutions. Be sure to check them out down below. driver61.com, where you can, of course, net yourselves 25% off your driver coaching by using our discount code and a link in the description down below. From one-on-one driver coaching to full driving courses, the folks over at Driver61 will have something that fits your needs. Fanatec, again, I say this every time, they need no introduction. I'm sure everybody watching along knows exactly who they are. Of course, one of the leading brands in dedicated sim racing hardware. And you can, of course, find our RCI affiliate link down below if you are looking to pick up any new hardware in 2024. And, of course, two new partners that joined us just last year, digitalmotorsports.com, offering a number of products and services from early drive programs, esports championships, driver training, simulator components, and even complete sim rig solutions. Of course, you can check them out down below if you are interested. And of course, lastly, but no means least, Go setups, again, raged about in the RCI drivers community. Everybody highly rates them very much indeed. And of course, dabbling their toe into the Assetto Corsa world, of course, following along with the low fuel motorsports calendar. So if you are looking to get an edge in regular Assetto Corsa events, be sure to check them out as well. But it's been a fantastic race tonight here at Snetterton. It's been very electric. Stewards are still frantically scribbling in the box next door, going over replays one by one. So they're going to be at it for some time yet, I can probably assure you. A couple of post-race penalty, post-race penalties. Lap 16, turn 5, between the 69 and the 95. It was a 5 seconds for the 69. That's Andy Boardman for overtake with contact. So Martin Ulrich could well be promoted on to the next step of the podium. So we'll have to keep our eyes peeled next week on the championship to see how that one goes down. But of course, from us tonight, it's time to say our goodbyes. Of course, we are back on RCI TV. It would have been for, of course, Night Owl this week, but of course a hiatus. So I think the next broadcast could be myself and Dan next week as we head to the next round of the Monday TCX and GT4 multi-class. Of course, next week we find ourselves at Barcelona in Spain before the following week, Indianapolis on April 1st. And then, of course, Alton Park on the following week of April 8th, where we will crown our champion of Mondays. But for tonight, from myself, John Dalton, from Dan Van Zoofen alongside me, and of course Ash Bibby behind the cameras, and all of our live stewards, we'd like to wish you farewell. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the week, and we hope to see you back soon on RCI TV. Take care.